Good morning, everybody, and you're all very welcome along to our Marine Ireland Industry Network event around clusters and innovation in the sector. Great to have so many people on board. We have 175 registered, and we may even have a few more attending at the last minute. So obviously people are interested in what's happening in MIN and what's happening in the broader marine sector in Ireland. Around this morning's event, it's obviously a virtual event, hopefully our last virtual event, but that is up to you. We do want to run 4 events in 2022, and we will be looking for your views on that. We really need to know what people want in terms of events. Do you want face-to-face events? Do you want site visits? Do you want particular geographic locations? Do you want, say, industry sectors? Whatever it might be. And we'd really like your input on events for 2022. We'll be looking at about 4 events for 2022. And Joe, who's our media guru, social media guru, will be sending out a poll to our members looking for their feedback on what they want in events for 2022. So do please let us know. It helps us hugely to shape events for the next year. Thanks as always to the Blue Wise Marine team who sit behind MIN, who do the very unglamorous heavy lifting behind the scenes. Major thank you there to John, Aoife, Mairead and Joe. They keep the website up and running and the social media piece up and running. So thanks to the guys there. Really good news is that we have a 3-year funding from the Marine Institute. So major thank you to Marine Institute around the Secretariat piece. So we will have guaranteed funding to keep that Secretariat up and running. There will be an announcement shortly as to who has actually won that contract. That's really good news. It means that we're on a solid footing for the next 2 years. So the way this works is Marine Institute does the Secretariat piece, we do the events piece, and other agencies then contribute as is relevant. So it's a kind of cross-agency, cross-industry approach. IT support today from Giuseppe and Tommy, our IT guys in EI. Thank you very much, guys. Hopefully we won't need to call on you too much. The event is split into 2 areas, I suppose. We're going to look firstly at 3 clusters that we have in the marine sector in Ireland, and then we're going to look at 4 innovative companies, really strong innovative companies that we have in the sector. The reason we're looking at clusters is that back a couple of months ago, myself and some of the other key people in the Marine Ireland Industry Network, we had a look at a piece of cluster training. We did a piece of cluster training around cluster development and cluster support and so on, with a view to seeing how MIN would fit with that. And one of the things that became clear to us is that MIN is not in itself a cluster. It is what the trainers call an umbrella organization. And the reason it's not a cluster is that it doesn't have a very specific industry sector focus. They gave us the example of a town somewhere in northern Italy, which is the world center for chairs. So basically, if you want a chair, an ergodynamic design for a chair, or you want a fabric design for a chair, or you want a chair manufactured for the furniture industry, or you want material for a chair, raw materials, or whatever components, whatever. You went to this specific town in Italy, and this is basically the world center of chairs. And we don't have that. What we have is a much broader church than that in terms of MIN. But what we did recognize was that MIN could provide this umbrella organization from which we could potentially spin out clusters and capability. And we're going to hear this morning from 3 clusters. So you're going to hear first from Katrina Power, who has a bioeconomy cluster operating out of MTU in Tralee, and that has a significant marine element to it. Second cluster you're going to hear about is from Carol Bonner in Keelybegs, And Carl actually has a cluster which is based, as you can imagine, around Killybegs. So it's a geographically based cluster. But anybody who's been to Killybegs knows that the marine engineering capability up there is really, really strong. And obviously we want to showcase that capability. And one of the interesting things is, can we take that capability and can we apply those skills and that experience and that capability to other sectors in marine other than the pelagic fishing industry, where it's primarily focused at the moment. Third sector you're going to hear, or sorry, third cluster you're going to hear about for your sins is mine, our Enterprise Ireland's. It's the offshore wind industry cluster. And we've recently rebranded this as Gale Offshore Network, kind of a play on Ireland Gale and Gale Wind. And I'll be explaining what we in Enterprise Ireland have been doing with that particular industry cluster and kind of where it's headed and events we have coming up and so on. So that's the first half of the event. Second half of the event, then you're going to hear from 4 really innovative companies in the marine sector. First up, we're going to hear from Danny Golden in Dublin Offshore. And the company there have developed a really innovative technology around a dynamic mooring system for floating offshore wind. Really interesting area and interesting technology. Next up, we've got Aidan Foley from Racics, and Racics are a startup in the space, and people will know we always like to give a bit of exposure to startups and you know, to get the message out there and have people understand what that startup is doing and how we can engage with it. Cathix Ocean, Adrian Boyle is going to talk to us about what work they've been doing. Adrian and Cathix would be well known to this parish. The guys have a subsea vision, lighting, and I suppose inspection capability. You know, really interesting capability in that space. And he's looking at kind of other areas that they've traditionally worked very solidly in oil and gas, but obviously diversifying into other areas then as well. And finally, we have Ty Kenny from Druid Software. And the guys in Druid have a lot of that IoT and comms capability that Ireland brings to the marine space. And, you know, potentially is an area where we can build a real national capability, a really strong offering to the industry, to multiple sectors across the marine space. Including things like offshore wind, but also, you know, shipping and maritime and so on, ports and so on. So he's going to talk about what they do in that space. We have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. So if you do have a question, put it in the questions facility there, not in the chat one, but if you look to the right of your screen there, you've got a questions facility there, and you can click on that and put a question in and we pick it up. Hopefully we'll have a bit of time at the end to do that. If we don't, we will come back to you on your specific questions, and we'll follow up with you. Okay, so that's the broad outline of the morning. As always, we are looking for good news stories for the MIN website, for the Marine Ireland website, right? And we would encourage you, if you have any news stories, do please share them with us and we'll get them up on the website. The website gets a lot of traffic, and actually that traffic is increasing every month, which is a great sign. So it's becoming a go-to place for people in the marine sector to go and get information about what's happening in Ireland. If you're a marine company and you're not in the directory, you should be. So get in contact with us there and we'll happily add you to the directory. We also have a facility there around jobs offers. So if people are looking for a particular capability or you know, a technical competency or whatever, we have the capability to put those jobs up on the website. We also have an events section and a funding element as well. So, you know, we are also, by the way, always looking for case studies. So if you have an interesting case study of something you did, do please let us know. Yeah, we always say that you know, this is a network which is not Marine Ireland's, or sorry, it's not Marine Institute's, it's not Enterprise Ireland's, it's not Blue Eyes Marine, it's not any other agency's web network. This is your network. So it sinks or swims based on your engagement with it. So do please get that stuff into us. Keep us up to date with what you're doing. We can get it out to a wider audience, including actually we're getting a significant amount of traffic from overseas. So it's a really good sign that you know, people are interested in what's happening in Ireland. The event is being recorded, so it will be available. Like I say, if we have questions that we can't answer, we'll come back to you with those later on, okay, if we don't get to them this morning. But let's go straight to our first cluster. And the first cluster up is Katrina Power from MTU in Tralee. Hi, Katrina. I'm going to come off video and sound, and Katrina is going to pick it up from here. So Katrina, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Liam, and thank you very much for the opportunity to join the event today. I really appreciate it. So if we could just move on with the slides there, please. Great. So hi everyone, my name is Katrina Power and I am the manager of the Circular Bioeconomy Cluster in the Southwest. We're based at Munster Technological University. I'm based in Tralee actually, and it's funded by Enterprise Ireland initiative, and it's been founded by the Circ Bio Research Group here at the university, who work across a number of different sectors in the circular bioeconomy. Next slide, please. So what is the bioeconomy and why is it important? Well, the bioeconomy is part of the economy that uses renewable resources like crops and forestry and fisheries to produce food for humans and animals, products and energy, but also reducing waste and recovering byproducts, all in support of achieving a climate neutral society. It's set out to be a $7.7 trillion market by 2030, and it's estimated that it will, create 1 million jobs across the EU by 2030. So quite significant in terms of its ambitions. Next slide, please. So what we do at the Circular Bioeconomy Cluster Southwest, we help to develop and promote the circular bioeconomy. And we do that through various different ways. We work on project collaboration with different companies. We have about over 20 members, and we work with them to identify opportunities in the marine, the agriculture, the waste to value sectors. And in marine specifically, we're really focused on developing those bio-based products and materials from either renewable material like seaweed and things like that, but also seafood byproduct, and what can be done with that, whether that's oyster shells or fish seafood byproduct, all that type of thing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in detail today. We also help companies identify funding opportunities for collaborative projects and for individual projects as well, helping them with applied R&D and making sure that they get the right support they're looking for when they're looking to create a new value-added product. We also support with training and upskilling. We do that through masterclasses and also through hosting on certificates and postgraduate courses on bioeconomy and circularity. We help with market connections, connecting companies to potential customers and investors as well. And also we're developing tailored programs to really support the companies to find those enterprise and profitable opportunities in the circular bioeconomy and create those new value chains. Next slide, please. So why is the circular bioeconomy so important? Well, there's actually a really significant market shift, and we're seeing that with at the policy level, with the European Green Deal, the Recovery Plan, Sustainable Blue Economy Plan, the Farm to Fork strategies, Sustainable Food strategies. All these policy documents are sort of paving the way for us to think about how we can create products that are more sustainable, that are less carbon intensive, and also are more sustainable for maybe their applied nature. So for example, if they're new fertilizers, new chemicals, that type of thing, so they're less harmful to nature. And so you're seeing that on the policy level. In terms of consumer demand, we recently did a study here at the university where it showed that attitudes to bio-based products are much more favorable now. And in our study, it showed that 93% of consumers would choose bio-based products over fossil-based. That's very important. Brand awareness, we're seeing those really large and medium-sized brands like the likes of Unilever and others who are starting to create a strategy and are enacting their strategies to procure those types of bio-based materials or chemicals, whatever it might be, for their supply chain. And so that's really important as well, because they're ultimately going to be the buyers of these new products and solutions. And then in terms of financial flows, like with the ongoing environmental and social governance sort of movement, you're seeing investors, more consciously invest in companies that are maybe taking a more sustainable approach to how they develop products and services and things like that. And you see that from the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund, you see it from Closely Partners in the US, and also Circularity Capital based in London. So that's sort of just kind of describing the market shift that we're seeing today. Next slide, please, Liam. And so in terms of, why it's important for the marine sector and why the opportunities, well, you can transform marine biomass and byproducts and seafood waste into valuable food ingredients, feed ingredients for animals, or other types of high value products like ingredients for cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and performance materials. And here in the chart, you can see that the types of volume you might need versus the value it can create. So maybe high volume types of maybe waste could be used for energy, heat and fuels, but it might be lower value. And the higher up the value chain you go, so for example, if you're interested in creating food and feed or pharmaceutical type of products, you might need less volume, but you probably need a lot more product development. And so that's kind of how the biomass value pyramid works. Next slide, please. So in terms of the fisheries sector, there's quite a few commercial activities happening in Ireland, particularly around ingredients. So there's a company called Biomarine Ingredients. They're taking in materials and combining that with hydrolysis and filtration technology to produce really high quality human grade protein, mineral and lipid ingredients for the market. And they're quite a significantly large company. Also on composting side, we're seeing a number of companies, particularly in the southwest as well, who are producing organic compost from seafood processing waste, and that has soil conditioning features and is also a natural biopesticide controlling like fungal plant disease and things like that. So really interesting applications for these types of byproducts. Next slide, please. There was also a really interesting Interreg funded project, and it was with BIM, Bordi Scavara, and also the Clean Technology Centre in Cork. I forgot to add their logos onto the slide here, but they ran a project called Food Heroes, and basically it was solving the seafood processors challenge. So where, for example, when they're filleting the fish, whether it's whitefish or salmon, only 35 to 45% of that is entirely used. So there was a lot of waste actually being produced, and they were able to measure the tonnage of that waste. And then they were able to identify new solutions and new types of products that could have been developed. So whether that was new types of maybe reformed fish product, maybe there was a new market opportunity for the heads and frames of the fish as well, or looking at dried byproducts for heat recovery as well. So really interesting project, and there's lots and lots of information actually on the Clean Technology Centre website about it, and BIM's website too. Next page, please. In terms of shellfish, so we're seeing a lot of opportunities around the shellfish, the aquaculture and shellfish sector in particular. The shells are mostly disposed of in landfills, and it's actually quite it can be a high expense, in terms of 80 to 100 euro per ton, and it's also quite ecologically harmful as well. But the good news is they are a great source of carbonate, and that can be used for different types of materials. And there's quite a few projects ongoing that are investigating opportunities for construction material. Can it be used in aggregate or cement or concrete, as an animal feed supplement, as a fertilizer, as a heavy metal removal in water, and also as supporting for aquaculture facilities as well in terms of dissolving nitrogen and phosphorus. So quite interesting there. Next slide, please. And you can see there's quite a few feasibility and product development projects ongoing in this space. One's by Symbioma up in Sligo. They're doing an interesting project looking at valorization of oyster shells and waste into valuable byproducts. And they have a really good case study for Donegal. And then there's also at MTU, excuse me, at MTU, there's also, we did an innovation sprint project with some oyster growers down here. And then there's also the Shell Aqua project that's run by the team at NUIG, and they're looking at benchmarking the environmental performance of aquaculture and seafood products. That's really important actually, because if you do a life cycle analysis for these types of things, and if you're looking to raise investment or funding, sometimes funders ask for that type of information, so it can unlock new commercial opportunities fundamentally. And next, and also unlock new markets where there is a demand for sustainable products. And then in terms of seaweed, so there's a lot of seaweed activity down here in the southwest, as well as all over Ireland and along the west coast. We see algae as a renewable, low carbon feedstock and has great potential for different types of products. There's new market opportunities as well as creating new jobs. And so those opportunities, they range from using bioactives from seaweed for cosmetics, using for new types of food products, plant protein products as well. Replacement of chemical fertilizers, for application in agriculture, horticulture, all that type of thing, and also animal feed as well. And there's a number of companies here that we work with in the southwest, so Banshee Marine Research Station, Nutrimara, Cybercolloids, BioAtlantis, and also Pure Ocean Algae. And what's really interesting from Europe, we're seeing that they have an algae initiative coming out and planned for 2022, where they aim to increase the sustainable production of algae and algae-based products in the future. So there's a bit of a concerted push there happening that might unlock new opportunities for the marine sector in Ireland. Next slide, please. So I wanted to tell you today about some available programs. One of them is called FAMVEST. FAMVEST is an Interreg funded project, really interesting for actually all types of businesses operating in the blue economy, not just bioeconomy. And so it's run by my colleague Laura Foley, and basically it's for entrepreneurs, SMEs, startups. They can access really interesting types of business coaching and networking opportunities with experts from France, Spain, Portugal, and the UK who have been operating in kind of maybe the offshore energy space, but marine biotechnology, also on the weather, satellites and data and that type of thing. Really interesting. And they have a suite of services on offer, and we'll be promoting that over the coming weeks and months. So I hope that you might be interested. And if you are, please do contact me if you'd like more information about that, or my colleague Laura there with her email. Next slide, please. And then in terms of the cluster services.
1 minute to finish, please, Katrina.
Perfect. Thank you, Liam. And then in terms of the cluster services, we work a lot with the Circular Bioeconomy Research Group here at MTU, also Shannon ABC, that's the Applied Biotechnology Centre, the IMAR Tech Gateway, who work on software and sensors and that type of thing, and also with our Irish partners like Bioorbic and Irish Bioeconomy Foundation. And we provide a suite of services together, so ranging from applied R&D to processing to new product development, market research, you name it. It's all, the list is there. But if you're interested and you'd like to learn more, please do get in touch. And one last slide, please. And then in case there are any job seekers on the call today, I just wanted to share that some of the companies in our network have got job opportunities available. Pure Ocean Algae are looking for hatchery researchers. BioAtlantis have a number of vacancies on their website, and Shannon ABC is also looking for a business development scientist, and that application has to be in by tomorrow. So maybe there's a last minute application here. And then the last slide is just my contact details. But thank you very much for listening. And if you're, do get in touch if you're looking to learn more about what we do here. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Katrina. Just a quick question there. So can a company, regardless of its location, apply for support under your system?
Yeah, they can get in touch and we can assess, how we can help them. And maybe there might be other entities who might be better suited, or we can work with them to identify that, the opportunities at hand.
Okay, but you're not confined to the Southwest or the Munster area. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks, Ray. Okay, we're going to move on to Carl Bonner from Killybegs. Carl, the floor is yours, sir.
Oh, thanks, Liam. So thanks for that, Liam. I suppose firstly, good morning, everybody, and I'd just like to thank the Marine Ireland Industry Network for hosting this very topical webinar, and I'd like to obviously thank Liam for the opportunity and for inviting Killybegs Marine Cluster along to participate in this webinar event. So my name is Carl Bonner, excuse me, and I'm the cluster manager for the Killybegs Marine Cluster, which is Ireland's only dedicated blue marine cluster. So next slide there, please. So in February 2021, the Killybegs Marine Cluster formed a partnership with Letterkenny Institute of Technology and Enterprise Ireland, and is currently 100% funded under the Regional Technology Cluster Fund. So the Killybegs Marine Cluster are part of Enterprise Ireland's national clustering programme and are one of 12 clusters on the island. with Katrina's cluster that you just heard, the circular bioeconomy cluster being part of that 12 as well, that group of 12. So Killybegs Marine Cluster plan to increase the linkages between industry and the educational research sectors on a mutual beneficial basis. So the aim really of this dedicated marine cluster, regional marine cluster, is to support and grow the economies related to the blue industries in southwest Donegal. The key objectives for the cluster are to increase new business development with a strong emphasis on the international markets, attract new talent and skills to the sector, and supporting both the current and the future skills within the blue economy for continuous development. Also to support the R&D activities within the blue economy, and then finally to build a community which is sort of underpinned by a cluster culture built or founded on trust. So next slide there, please. So the Killybegs, I suppose the port of Killybegs is a designated, is the country's designated port, or I suppose fishery harbour centre. So it's one of 6 fishery harbour centres, and it's operated by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and they're responsible for the maintenance, the management and the development of the port and its facilities. So Killybegs Port is also a base for a wide range of other marine activities and services. Killybegs have extensive experience in servicing and supporting both the onshore wind and the offshore oil and gas industries, and have been doing such for over 25 years. What's unique is they work hand in glove with the fisheries and the fishery community. So Killybegs have historic experience of working side by side with the fishing industry, and have 100% support while supporting these other blue and emerging industries. So the Killybegs Marine Cluster itself currently comprises of 20 members, and they've combined annual revenues in excess of 300 million, and about 95% of this is export led. The member companies employ anywhere between 2 and 250 full-time staff, and are collectively providing sustainable employment for over 1,000 people within a sort of a traditionally rural employment black spot on the west coast of Ireland. The Killybegs Marine Cluster include several blue economies and related sectors, but they're not limited to these sectors. The first of which is commercial fishing, which is the base industry. Then you have fish processing, marine engineering, aquaculture, renewable energies, marine services and marine tourism. Next slide there, please. So this is just a visual really of the members at the moment that make up the cluster. So at the moment, our ecosystem comprises of 20 members across a broad range of blue economy industries. But Killybegs Marine Cluster, they're always obviously interested in developing this membership list and joining our marine cluster. So for more information on this, you can visit our website, which is www.kmc for Killybegs Marine Cluster.blue. Next slide there, please. So the ecosystem, Killybegs, this marine cluster is unique. It's a unique ecosystem and has a strong point of difference, certainly when benchmarked against other international marine focused clusters. Firstly, Killybegs' geographical location provides access to the richest fishing grounds and the highest, most sustained wind speeds in Europe, which is unique. And they also, Killybegs have a deep pool of skills and talent, and together with the rich maritime history, they have helped create a very agile and highly skilled trained workforce. The Killybegs members are also located within walking distance of each other, and the map that's highlighted there is approximately 1 square kilometre. So this makes it unique, a very unique marine ecosystem and a very attractive place to do business. So Killybegs really is a one-stop shop for all things marine. Next slide there, please. Talent and skills. This is obviously important for the continuous development of the blue economy. So the Killybegs Marine Cluster continuous engagement with industry to help identify the current and future skills or requirements for the continuous development of the blue economy. Quite recently, so the Letterkenny Institute of Technology, LYIT, and Donegal ETB reintroduced an electrical apprenticeship programme, which actually commenced there in September and currently has 32 apprenticeships on board. And this programme was structured on a sort of a blend of on-the-job, off-the-job training for the duration of the course. And in addition, Killybegs are working proactively, reaching out to second-level students to help build awareness within the broad and sort of diverse career opportunities that exist within the blue economy. And we're also promoting gender balance within the blue economy. So we're tailoring our marketing efforts for blue economy career opportunities, specifically targeting females for roles such as marine engineering, food science, new product development, and so on. Next slide there, please. So the current infrastructure in Killybegs, well, I suppose the first thing is Killybegs has a deep water and naturally sheltered all-weather harbour infrastructure. The actual quay wall is all reinforced, so it's making it suitable for extremely heavy lifts. The port has ample storage, as you can see some of the wind turbine blades here for onshore wind. So it has ample storage with additional storage capacity in close proximity, less than 1 kilometre away. And then Killybegs have a total combined pier berthage of more than 1,200 metres, which is used for a wide array of marine activities such as commercial fishing, logistics, cargo handling, vessels, support and leisure facilities or leisure cruising. Killybegs also have a wealth of experience servicing both the onshore wind and the offshore oil and gas industries, and have been doing so for over 25 years. And the port currently has a synchro-lift in place, or a boat lift, which is currently owned and maintained by the department. The boat lift has a 600 gross tonne or 40 metre maximum lifting capacity. Next slide, please. So the enabling infrastructure. So to realise the full potential available in Killybegs' blue economy, it requires enabling infrastructure. A comprehensive independent study was carried out, and it identified 2 significant enabling infrastructure requirements for Killybegs, which presented a really attractive return on investment. So the first was to increase or replace the current synchro lift or boat lift with a new 90 metre lifting capacity, and also to extend the pier by an additional 250 metres. And just the other element to the infrastructure is LYIT, and myself personally is based in LYIT campus in Killybegs, and Letterkenny Institute of Technology have planning to build an ocean innovation centre for marine resources, including offshore renewable energies, added value seafood and marine tourism, and this will also be located just directly across from the harbour on LYIT's campus. Next slide there, please. So I suppose looking towards more the future, so Killybegs are very proactive and focused on continuous development. Killybegs is founded on an entrepreneurial culture, so innovation is very much part of the DNA. Killybegs visualise a very bright future, a very green future, and a sustainable future for the next generation. Killybegs have some excellent examples of innovation across several marine sectors, such as marine engineering. This particular industry sector are becoming global leaders in supporting other rapidly growing marine sectors, such as aquaculture. Food processing, as Katrina alluded to, is another sector in which Killybegs are becoming global leaders. So Killybegs are replicating effectively what the dairy industry have done to milk by extracting higher value products, such as fish oils and fish proteins, for new alternative markets, such as maybe health and fitness, or the health and fitness industry. One of the key objectives for this marine sector is to increase the utilisation of the materials. And renewable energy, that I'm sure Liam's going to talk about, is another emerging sector for Killybegs that Killybegs can support and provide massive value in terms of this generational and exciting opportunity for Ireland's west coast. So Killybegs are best placed to support this sector based on their geographical location, their harbour infrastructure, and their marine engineering capabilities and skills. And this will be across a range of production of hydrogen, floating wind, other renewables such as wave, tidal energies and technologies. So thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to answering any of your questions in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Carl, thanks very much for that. That's brilliant. We brought a group of people up to Killybegs a little while back, a couple of years back now, and people were just blown away by the marine engineering capability there. And it would be great to see that diversify into other areas of marine as well, so we can you know, bring additional value there. Thank you very much. Carl, you might come off video, please, and mute yourself. And the third, so my turn again for my sins, or for your sins more likely. Right, let's talk about, actually I'm going to come off video because it's a little peculiar for me here in my setup. So let's talk about offshore wind and work Ireland has been, our Enterprise Ireland has been doing in offshore wind. Sorry, I probably should have introduced myself early on. I'm a senior technologist with Enterprise Ireland, and I suppose I'm the marine specialist within Enterprise Ireland. And I work alongside other colleagues like Dara Cotter in particular on offshore wind and the opportunities in offshore wind. So we have been working on offshore wind for about 3 years at this stage. And we've built basically a network of companies with the capability to be involved in the industry. We used to call this the Enterprise Ireland Offshore Wind Industry Cluster, but that's a bit clunky. So we've switched it, we've rebranded to this Gale Offshore Network. So Gale, a play on Ireland and offshore, Ireland and wind. And the tagline is Ireland's supply chain for global offshore wind. Now the global piece is quite important there because people will know Enterprise Ireland's focus is on exports, and that's a key piece. I'll come back to that in a minute. So we've been working on it for about 3 years. We started off with a showcase to key UK buyers in April 2019. And we were going to run a very similar event in April 2020, but obviously COVID put paid to all of that, as you can imagine. So we will, I'll come to in a minute, we'll be running an event in January, but we also did a market study visit, and this is really interesting because we brought a group of companies over to one of the key centres of the industry in the UK, Lowestoft and Great Yarmouth. They're kind of up the road from each other. Lowestoft is interesting because it's an O&M port, an operation maintenance port, Great Yarmouth because it's a construction port for the industry. It's interesting to see the differences in employment in those two ports. Lowestoft, I don't know if anybody's been to Lowestoft recently, but it was a port which was very much an ex-fishing port. It was effectively on its knees. It's been completely revitalized by the offshore wind industry. And I was watching, the morning we were there, I was watching CTVs going out to work, crew transfer vessels going out to work on the offshore wind farms in that area. And there was literally a queue of CTVs trying to get out the harbour mouth. So it's an indication of what is potentially, what can potentially happen in Ireland as well. We did run a series of virtual events in 2021, just to keep people informed and to keep the momentum up. We did a number of companies presented recently to Equinor, and we have another event coming up around Equinor's asks in consultancy in particular in that area of offshore wind. We also did an event where we presented Irish capability to Dutch tier ones. So we're talking about the likes of Van Oord, Boskalis, Demi Offshore, and so on. So big players in the industry and key players in terms of the tier 2 companies that will be Ireland's offering to the industry, at least in the short term. We are planning a face-to-face event. Yay, face-to-face event for January 25th and 26th of 2022, hopefully in Croke Park. And that will be focused, the first day will be focused on the UK market and to some extent other markets. We'll probably have a look at Norway and Denmark as well. But primarily the UK market, because that's kind of the key opportunity, I think, for our companies. Second day will be focused on the Irish projects and their supply chain. So we did have a discussion with our senior management, and we explained to them, you know, the size of the projects coming to the Irish Sea in particular in the short term or medium term, and the need to develop local content in the supply chain for those projects. So they've given us the go-ahead to work on supply chains for the Irish projects as well as the export opportunity. I suppose one thing to say is that in terms of kind of the progress on the Irish projects, I was at the Wind Energy Ireland Offshore Wind Conference back a couple of weeks ago, and you could really sense people's frustration with the rate of progress on the projects in Ireland. But from our perspective, that's actually not necessarily a bad thing, because it gives us time to get our companies into the UK industry. And you can see here, the cluster now has 60 members in it, 60 plus members actually. We see the immediate opportunity in the UK. And one of the key pieces there is that the developers and tier one contractors who currently work in the UK will be coming to Ireland. So it makes sense to kind of link up with them and showcase Irish capability to those developers and tier one contractors. The UK is going to install 40 gigawatts by 2030. So there's going to be a major supply chain opportunity there around that. So we have been engaging, like I say, with the relevant developers and tier ones. I suppose what we would hope would happen is that we can bring that capability back home to the Irish projects to ensure the maximum amount of local content in the supply chain for those projects. And although we will be starting with bottom fixed in the Irish Sea, we will subsequently have floating in the Celtic Sea and further west into the Atlantic in time. So major opportunity there for people with the right skill sets in the marine sector. And down on the bottom of the slide there, in those blue and green squares, you see where we think Ireland has specific capability. And one of those really key capabilities is around that IoT, robotics, data analysis, data collection, comms, connectivity piece. That's a real area of strength for Ireland, and it's in some ways a unique piece that we can potentially bring to offshore wind. These are the logos of our 60 plus companies. There's probably people frantically looking to see if their logo is in there. If your logo isn't in here, don't worry, we can add you in. We're very happy to sign up anybody who has capability to be part of this industry. And you don't have to necessarily be an Enterprise Ireland client company. You can be a Leo company or even a standalone company. What we're trying to do is pull together Irish capability in the sector. And obviously you can't name check everybody there, but you see top left-hand corner there, Dublin Offshore, that's Danny's, and you'll be hearing from Danny in a minute. Further down on the left-hand side there, you've got HE Marine, startup in the space, looking at CTVs. You've got Alpha Marine, who have formed a joint venture with Mainport Holdings, and they have a vessel which is actually working down off Sicily at the moment, doing surveys for an offshore wind farm down there. So great example of Irish capability being exported into other markets. Gavin and Doherty Geosolutions there, bottom to the left, global company in the geotech and geophys space. You'll also see companies like H&MV Engineering there. Those guys do onshore substations, and Ireland has a lot of capability in that space. Like I say, can't name check everybody, but you can see there's a significant Irish capability there that can be brought to bear on the industry. So it's really good. In terms of how offshore wind farms are developed, you basically have three stages. You've got what's called development or DevEx stage, and that can be quite a long lead-in time before you actually start construction. So you've got development, you've got construction, which is what it says on the tin, and you've got operation and maintenance, which is the follow-up bit then. And what I'm showing you here is some companies that fall into those particular areas. Now, I emphasize it's just an example. If your company name is not there, don't get upset. It's just to show some capabilities that we have at particular development stages and development sectors within the industry. So that's it from me on the Gale Offshore Network. Like I say, if people want to be part of that, we're more than happy to include you in it. Do keep in mind the event around the 25th, 26th of January. We will also be looking at doing an Irish pavilion at Global Offshore Wind next year. In fact, at the moment, Dara Cotter, as we speak, is in Global Offshore Wind in London, kind of meeting with Irish companies and talking to people about the Irish capability there. So a lot happening in that space. It's great to see it, and we're really happy to be promoting Irish companies in that space. Right, let's move on to our 4 companies. So we're going to hear from 4 companies now. We're going to hear from Dublin Offshore, Racics, Catix Ocean, and Druid Software. And we'll start with Danny Golden of Dublin Offshore. Danny, if you're there, can you switch on your video, please? Good man. And the floor is yours, Danny.
Thank you, Liam. Good to be here. And like some of the earlier speakers saying, thanks to Liam and the network and Enterprise Ireland for setting up the event and for the opportunity to pitch and say hello and talk a little bit about what we here in Dublin Offshore are doing and will be continuing to do. If you jump on to the next slide there, please, Liam. So Dublin Offshore, for those of you who haven't heard of us, we're a specialised marine engineering company. We've been in operation about 3 years, but between all of us, we've well over a decade experience across the marine industry in general, everything from design and build of bespoke heavy lift vessels, overseeing salvage operations, and a lot of experience in particular in bringing new marine technology from early design, concept design, getting it fabricated, getting it deployed, getting it certified, and getting it into operation. So our backgrounds are very much about making technology work particularly in the marine renewables space. And we founded the company in a sense to continue that work that we've been doing over the last more than a decade. On the next slide, please, Liam. I'll spend most of my 10 minutes this morning talking through what we're doing on the technology development side, but we're also very active in engineering services. So as a company, I'd say somewhere over 90% of our work at the moment is in floating wind, a combination of our technology and our engineering services. On the services side, we are working with both project developers and technology developers. So a whole variety of services going from a lot of logistics planning. So for example, at the moment, we're working with Údarás na Gaeltachta, looking at, for example, the potential for Rossaville and the broader Galway Gaeltacht to play a role in the floating wind pipeline off our west coast, and what that means both for infrastructure requirements and local skills, and obviously the upsides to that in terms of employment, and everything from that to very detailed engineering work. We're bringing an innovative floating platform developer through all the engineering phases. We're leading their certification and validation work. So everything from high-level project support to detailed engineering for a whole variety of people across the industry, both in Ireland and outside of Ireland. So in parallel to working very closely with the industry on their projects and technologies, we're also working in constant development on our own. So if you jump to the next slide, please, Liam, I'll talk a bit through our mooring device. So Liam mentioned a little earlier the technology that we've been developing. So in a sense, what this is an inline mooring component that's connected between the platform fairlead and the anchor. So the mooring forces are acting through the component. and this load reduction device then provides the compliance for the platform. And we can optimize that compliance response, that nonlinear response to control platform movements, and effectively reduce very significantly the design loads that are acting on the mooring line, on the platform, and on the anchor. And that allows for anywhere where that load is cost driving, for very significant cost savings, and for an entire redesign of the system, where components that were in the mooring to provide the compliance, so a chain catenary or a synthetic line or clump weights or buoyancy units, can be removed, and the load reduction device now provides that compliance. So it allows also for a very significant simplification of the mooring system and a reduction in the footprint. Key kind of high-level KPIs here are that allows for very, very substantial cost reductions and ultimately a cost of energy reduction. We've been working over the last 2 years with this and working with a variety of industry bodies and doing a lot of work with specific developers on a whole variety of sites, and looking at a starting point between 8 to 10% LCOE reduction by optimizing the mooring system and allowing that saving to be seen across the project. And on even more aggressive sites, say for example off the Irish West Coast, cost savings even greater than that again, where baseline moorings without a load reduction device are at the absolute edge of what can be achieved with existing materials. That it pushes everything into very high grade materials that are hard to procure. And also you have to consider you're competing with an international supply chain now within floating wind over the next number of years for all these mooring components. So reducing the requirement on mooring components and the volume of components is key to allowing projects to cost effectively be developed. It's a very, very simple component. It's operating with just buoyancy and ballast. It's fabricated from steel and concrete. So a 25-year to 30-year maintenance-free life, where in that response, that nonlinear response, is exactly the same in year 30 as it is on day one. So there's no creep, there's no hysteresis, there's no change in performance because it's just built around gravity. And as long as gravity stays the same over the next 30 years, we can stand over a 25 to 30-year performance life for the component. If you jump onto the next slide there, please, Liam. So the simplicity of the component is really what's key, because these are permanent mooring installations. They're ultimately a single point of failure for a system that's worth tens of millions. So they need to have that robustness and safety built in. We've tested this offshore. We've been through a very detailed statement of feasibility certification process with DNVGL. So the ability of this component to deliver the benefits that you can see on screen is something that's very clear due to its simplicity. So in addition to that cost saving, there are many project level benefits that can be optimized the earlier that it's built into the design process in the project. Everything from reducing the footprint of the mooring system, bringing the anchors much closer to the platform, which can be both a benefit in environmental permitting, that you now have a smaller lease area, and in situations such as in Scotland, where long-term seabed leases are based on area of the seabed, and that brings down your lease costs over the lifetime of the platform. It allows for, like I was saying, a change in your approach to design. So you can remove the heavy chain, you can increase the use of synthetic only mooring systems, and this means that the installation of the system is greatly simplified. You're not installing several hundred kilometers of chain, you're installing several hundred meters of much easier to handle synthetic line. So the overall impact on BOP, on the marine spread required, on the simplicity of both procuring the vessels and undertaking those offshore operations allows for that kind of project level benefit. If you jump to the next slide, please, Liam. So we've been taking this to market over the last 2 years. We started with the early proof of concept and the first sketch of the idea just over 2 years ago. We've lodged obviously the IP at around the same time, and brought that through that numerical modeling, everything from building that early prototype and testing it ourselves, ultimately to bringing through multiple rounds of tank testing, both here in Ireland, down in Cork, and also most recently in the Netherlands, in Maran, where we're working in collaboration with one of the tier 1 semi-sub developers, looking at very specific North Sea sites and developing an inclined taut mooring system based around the integration of the LRD that allows them to very significantly reduce their costs and effectively improve the viability on an aggressive site. This has been, like I was saying, deployed offshore on the west coast of Ireland at quarter scale. So the little image that you see on the bottom, and on the bottom right, there's some subsea footage where we operated quite happily through hurricanes and storms. Hurricane Epsilon did its worst to us there before Christmas last year, and we very happily watching it do its job through some of the most severe conditions that the Atlantic could throw at it. So like I said, the simplicity of this, both in terms of how it works, which is just buoyancy and ballast, and the ease of modeling and the ease of fabrication. There's no particular requirement on the supply chain that they can't already handle. You can fabricate this as a component anywhere in the world. Any decent steel fabricator or shipyard will be able to handle it. Means that we're just at that sort of final pre-commercial step where we're currently in conversations with getting this at full-scale demo scale, hopefully in the water over the next few months to a year. But it's also being considered by over 5 gigawatts of the global floating wind pipeline currently, where we're working through with those projects and working very closely with project developers to undertake the detailed assessment of this component within their procurement strategy. So we see this as over the last couple of years having effectively banked a lot of the data and the learning that's needed to deploy this offshore. I guess what's also key there, like I say, just coming back to the point on simplicity, is having gone through a detailed process with DNVGL to achieve that statement of feasibility. The key finding there is really about the low novelty of the device, that in order to go from a statement of feasibility to full product certification, the qualification plan is quite straightforward. There's no novel materials to have to qualify during that process, and it allows us a single step to that final commercial scale deployment.
1 minute finish, please, Danny.
Okay, sure. If you jump to the next slide there, Liam, I may have to ask you to speed a little bit through this video to get some of the key points in the last minute. But effectively, it's just to give a quick overview, if the video plays, of what this looks like installed at full scale. The ease of handling, we can install these units using existing anchor handlers. They can be lifted with standard crawler cranes. They don't put any extra requirements on the marine spread, and it means that the LRD can be installed either as a prelay operation or with the platform as it's brought out. Liam, if you can just maybe jump to the middle of that video, and I'll skip to the end a little bit to respect the time constraints. Yeah, anywhere around there is fine. So yeah, as it's been brought out, it is connected in line. You can see here it's installed simply by as simple as dragging it off the back of an anchor handler. In operation, it's neutrally buoyant, so once it's in the water, there's no load on that hook or on that winch, and it can operate happily within the system then for the next 25 to 30 years. Doesn't really put any extra strain or requirements onto the deployment operation. It means effectively, like we say, that at full scale, it can be easily fabricated, easily deployed, and have a very substantial impact on the cost of that project. Yeah, you think you can jump to the next slide, Liam, and I'll wrap up. So overall, like we're saying, we do two things. We deliver services and we deliver technology, and we've also upgraded our website. It's been due an upgrade over the last 3 years. So please get in contact with us, dublinoffshore.ie. You can learn a lot more about the technology, about our backgrounds, and there's a button there to get in touch. So thanks for your time, and look forward to any questions in the Q&A at the end. Thanks, guys.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Danny. You might come off video there, please. And yeah, that was great. Really interesting technology, and obviously offshore wind is going to be such a crucial industry for Ireland in the future. It's great to see Irish developers bringing innovative solutions to it. Now let's move to Racics. This is Aidan Foley from Racics, and the company are in the marine leisure market, and particularly around navigation and indeed connectivity for the leisure boater. Aidan, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Liam, both for today's event and our opportunity to present at it. So yeah, I'm Aidan. I'm one of the co-founders of Racics, and we're bringing the significant disruption to marine leisure with our Boating OS platform. So today I'd like to quickly tell you two quick stories. One is about our core business, and the second is a spin out that we've been focusing a lot of attention on lately. And next slide, please. Our ambition is to be the global leader for marine leisure data. And right now we're busy building out our software beta, having successfully completed our alpha. We've got world-class partnerships in place, and in 2019 we opened offices in Savannah, Georgia to support our entry into the US. Next slide. In that American market, we've got addressables of 12.3 million boats and a market value of over $14 billion. Next slide. Marine leisure is in many ways an anomaly. The ocean environment means that you'd really benefit from the type of innovation we see now in the automotive space, but it mostly doesn't exist. Next slide. The real pain points can be pushed into three main areas. So we've got terrible mapping, where we've got maps which are out of date, out of context, and delivered to many who don't understand what they're looking at. We've got little support for marine activities. Over 40% of boaters leave the sector within 5 years. We need to reduce this churn rate by better supporting what they do with their time on the water. And there's no big data play in the sector. Our industry has little true insight into boaters' usage patterns and behaviors. It's desperate for that data, but it's waiting there to be unlocked properly. Next slide. So we resolve these issues through our three pillars of support, enhance, and inform. We support boaters by giving them up-to-date mapping on a live basis in a way that's fully intuitive. We unlock millions of data sets to provide rich, contextually aware experiences which can enhance every on-water activity and adventure. And our connected boat platform gathers live user data, interprets it, and delivers true business intelligence to our industry. Next slide. Our platform is built on 14 very different but highly complementary layers, which gives an entirely different experience at the helm. Next slide. It's an approach which has received a lot of international support and noise every time we make an announcement. Next slide. Since our inception, we've always had a strong focus on the environmental opportunities we could bring to our sector. During the COVID lockdowns, we spent a lot of time focused on some specifics in this area. This was driven by a combination of our own interests and a growing appetite within the boating sector. Next slide. We started with a very simple proposition. What if recreational boating was a climate positive activity? Next slide. And what if we could also make boating more responsible and enriched at the same time? Next slide. The results of this work is Mer, which is French for Mother Sea. It's three elements delivering one revolutionary platform. Next slide. The first is Mer Zero, and we're building that to become the most verified, audited, quantified, and permanent marine offsetting platform ever created. We make marine offsetting simple, trustworthy, intuitive, and entirely transparent. Next slide. On top of that, we add Mer Grow, where we nurture our marine environment while supporting the carbon sequestration initiatives of tomorrow. We don't just invest in tomorrow's carbon sinks, we also support, encourage, and nurture vital marine habitat initiatives. Next slide. And it's all delivered through Mer Live, our free smartphone delivered game-changing experience for everyone on board, delivering supported, enriched, and intuitive boating. This opens up enormous new opportunities around safer, more responsible, and more rewarding boating for everyone on board. Next slide. To deliver Mer, we're putting together a board comprised of the very best environmental and scientific minds combined with global thought leaders on ocean climate action. And finally, Mer lives or dies on the transparency and integrity of our processes, actions, and activities. There's no place here for greenwashing. So that's a very, very quick flyover from 40,000 feet of Racics. Thanks for listening. If anyone here is working in this space, particularly the Mermer areas of offsetting or salt marshes or seagrasses, please reach out to us. This particular element has gathered significant traction, momentum in the last few months, and we're keen to try and keep as much of it domestically here in Ireland as possible. So thank you, Liam.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Aidan. And you flew through those slides. Well done. You covered that in less than 5 minutes. I'm very impressed, and you've gained me back some time, which is even better still. So thank you very much. And if anybody has questions for Aidan there, come back to us on those. Okay, so Aidan, you might come off camera, please, and we move on to Cathix Ocean, Adrian Boyle. And Adrian, are you there? Sorry, just checking. Do we have Adrian? We don't have Adrian. Sorry, did I hear Adrian there? Adrian? You out there? Okay, we don't appear to have Adrian. What we might then do is move to Tyke Kenny. I'm sorry, Tyke, now for dropping in this a little bit.
No problem, Liam.
Okay, good man, right. So I just quickly scroll through Adrian's slides. Oh, sorry, yeah, you're going to present, aren't you, directly?
Yes.
Sorry, Adrian. We have Adrian.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Sorry. You there, Adrian?
Sorry, Liam, I seem to have some sort of a time delay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we've got you there now. You're good. Yeah, okay, I'll come off Mike, and you're on. The floor is yours, Adrian.
Thanks. So I think, have you got my slides showing? Sorry, Liam, I'm not seeing my slides. There you go, perfect. Listen, thank you. Sorry about that delay. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm in the middle of Kildare. Seem to have some sort of latency issue this morning. If you go to slide 1, Liam, thank you for having me and for thinking of Cathix in this. I'll give you a bit of an overview of what we do and where we operate. So Cathix, I'm a founder. We started Cathix in 2009. What we do is what we call specialist subsea optical imaging. I'll talk a little bit more about what that is as we go through the presentation. Our manufacturing is based in Naas in Kildare, and we operate globally. We started off in the oil and gas sector, and we have made considerable movement in the last 18 months in particular into other areas. And I'll talk a little bit about what those areas are as we go through the presentation. We filed a bunch of patents in 2012. They've all been awarded. And the technology that we deliver today is very much based around how we collect data, how we process and use that data, and fundamentally, to put it in simple terms, how we change from using video for offshore underwater operations to actually using 3D digitization and measurement data to extract information and do predictive analytics. If you go to the next slide, Liam. So the two, yeah, actually globally, we're based in Naas. We've worked and we supply our systems essentially to all of the different industries, from oil and gas to defence, essentially wind, deep sea mining, and environmental investigations. So we pretty much go anywhere that the work is. As you can imagine, it's not like it goes around any one country. You probably will notice that there's a lot of oil and gas, so we've done quite a bit in the North Sea. More recently, we have some wind farm survey operations happening in the North Sea, and then in other locations, oil and gas, Western Australia, Angola, Brazil, and also the Gulf of Mexico. So, but since we started that in 2015, we've expanded beyond oil and gas, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that is. If you go to the next slide, Liam. And how we productize our products. In the early days, we used to sell image acquisition systems. We've transitioned away from that, and the technology that we call it it's fast digital inspection, and it's split into essentially things on the seabed. So this is downward facing imaging systems, and then forward facing imaging systems for structural surveys. If you go to the next slide, Liam. And to try and explain what FDI is at a very simple level, on a big boat that has an ROV attached to it with a video camera, typically, that ROV, if it's performing a video or visual survey, will travel at a speed of about 0.5 knots. Often it's a half of that, particularly when you're doing a pipeline survey or a seabed survey. And historically, you would have a large number of surveyors on the vessel watching the video as it was acquired. And the two aspects of it that were important to Cathix back in the early days were, well, why is it going so slow? And, do you need as many people on the boat? So in 2015, we did a survey with a company called MMT in Gothenburg, and we demonstrated that we could actually move the ROV much faster than that. We showed that we could actually move it at up to 5 knots. So it was effectively a 10-fold increase in the speed of data acquisition. We increased the area of imaging, and then by that account, we actually changed the time that the boat needs to be in the water. And many of these boats can cost in excess of 70,000 a day. So that was a lead into the oil and gas sector, and over 4 years, we expanded that into Kongsberg Maritime, Deep Ocean, and pretty much every subsea contractor in the oil and gas space. The data quality is another major driver. If you go to the next slide, Liam, I'll talk a bit more about that in due course. But in terms of the vehicles, like I said, we put our systems on ROVs, AUVs, and pretty much every class of underwater vehicle that there is out there, we've done work and integrated onto those systems. Next slide, please. The industries, if you look at the top of this graphic, we did a lot of work in oil and gas. We've shipped systems to the US Navy and to other navies indirectly. We did a lot of work around prelay survey on cable routes, and certainly salvage where there was wreckage, aircraft and vessels that had downed, either many years ago. If anybody's interested, there's a very good Channel 4 documentary on, it's called the Black Sea Map. It's about an hour and a half of searching for shipwrecks in the Black Sea, I believe in the hope of finding Noah's Ark, which they never did find. But there's certainly some good graphics, and a lot of our imagery and footage is on that. So it's a reasonably entertaining hour if you have it. More recently, we've seen quite a bit of interest from the wind sector, deep sea mining, and also fisheries. And if you like, encompassing all of those 3 sectors is a very substantial marine environment project that we internally, we're trying to assess how best to handle this because the scale of it seems huge. We've recently shipped a number of systems for surveying and assessing the environmental baseline at a visual level for very specific deep sea mining areas. So as a business, we are looking at our product lineup and figuring out, okay, what is it that we need to do to achieve the scale that's needed in these areas. And we certainly see wind also as growing substantially. I think it's something like 6,000 turbines installed to 36,000 over the next 10 years. And the environment and the habitat around these, but also the actual construction and the operations. So from Liam's slide, it's not just on the IRM side of it, it's actually on in some areas we're working on the construction side and the actual development side to try and understand, is there more efficient ways to do some of the things that go on there. If we go to the next slide. So as a business and as the industry, certainly from March of last year when the industries we serve changed, we couldn't get people offshore, and what we started to do was look at what we call autonomous fast digital inspection. And in other words, if you think about it, when we go 5 times or 10 times faster on the vessel, we can't really watch the video, so we need to process that data as it comes off it automatically. And we took that a step further and said, well, if we're trying to do that in scale, how should we tackle it? So if we go to the next slide. And the next one. So these are some of the vehicles. So you'll see autonomous underwater vehicles and of course uncrewed. I guess you guys all know James Ives and the Ex-Ocean guys. So that's an example of a relatively small uncrewed vessel, but there also is a large number of players in this space that if you look at it, the uncrewed element is one challenge. But if you go and you add the underwater, the ROV or the AUV element to this, it becomes a considerably more difficult challenge, because not only now are you looking after a vehicle which is unmanned or uncrewed on the surface, but in fact there could be either a remotely controlled ROV, which some would consider might actually be an anchor if it gets into the wrong situation, or an AUV loaded off that. So from a Cathix perspective, this has created a different opportunity for us. If you go to the next slide. And what we're actually looking at is how do we build our technologies, not only from the point of view of asset integrity, but in fact the environmental asset. And that theme kind of rings out through a lot of the deep sea mining, the wind and the alternative energy areas that we're looking at. And key to it for Cathix is how do we reduce the cost to acquire. So we've already reduced the cost to acquire visual data by about 80%. Currently we're working on how that data gets processed and delivered to the end client in an automated way, because not only are they looking at uncrewed surface operations, but actually there's also a whole drive towards shore launched AUV, as well as resident AUV and resident ROVs. So what Cathix is doing is looking at that opportunity, figuring out what is the best methodology to build our processing capability into, and then using that both to create demand for our systems and demand for the data that they generate. And the key to all of that is being able to monitor change over time. So by reducing the cost sufficiently, it allows us to actually get baseline data and perform very precise measurement of change. That's true of asset integrity in oil and gas, asset integrity in wind, or even environmental baseline integrity assessments. If we go on to the next slides, then actually you can skip through that one. You can kind of put, I think there's a few, but yeah, you can hit that 3 or 4 times, Liam. Thank you. So fast digital inspection is, we've transitioned from being a system provider to essentially a service provider. And the reason for it is that there's many diverse users of our systems, all trying to process the data in different ways. And what we've done is we said, look, instead of selling a system such as the one you see here, which is our Vanguard, and you can hit return on that, Liam, I think it'll give some text. Our Vanguard system is essentially one of our historical systems, but all integrated into a single unit. And the whole logic of this is that we can deploy it anywhere in the world, leave it on the vessel and turn it on when the job is required. So from a Cathix point of view, that lets us deploy the technology that we traditionally would have had guys going offshore with into many regions. So some of the regions in the world like Brazil and West Africa, it can be difficult to get in and out under export controls, but leaving the systems there and allowing the users to use them when needed. And focusing on how we process that data is kind of central to our ongoing strategies. If you go to the next slide, Liam. These are some samples. This was Western Australia back in 2018. The shark was probably traveling about 20 knots looking for his dinner. The ROV was moving about 3 knots. But it gives you an idea, this image is maybe 4 meters across. We're flying 5 meters off the pipeline. And we collect, in that particular job, like the last slide said, we collected what used to take maybe 60 days. We did it in 16 days. So the cost efficiencies are huge. The quality of the data is huge. And it also reduces the need for many of the other data sets, such as multi-beam sub-bottom and a whole bunch of other information that may not be critical to the pipeline asset integrity. But if you look at that in detail, you can actually see that we can also pick up small holes on the seabed. We can count specific species. We can look at the health of the coral and the growth, and that's driving some of the environmental studies that we're doing at the moment. If we go to the next slide, Liam. Central to the kind of development road also, and actually you can skip to the next one after that as well. We also then, because of the way we acquire the data, we don't just acquire 2-dimensional images, we acquire 3-dimensional data at very high speed. We use the 3-dimensional data to event or to find things on the seabed, but also because of the IP and the technology we have, we can generate these large 3-dimensional maps of the seabed. And that allows us, in the first instance, to navigate by eye in much the way as they do today, but on an onshore environment. So effectively, we have software products then that allow the users to assess that data, to tag the events in that data. And our next phase of development is really to use that information best to automate the detection of those particular features so that they can be detected during the acquisition time. So our business is really aimed at putting the detection on the imaging sensors or near the imaging sensors or to the edge, as they say. And what that lets us do is what we call automated eventing, but more importantly for the uncrewed and autonomous operations, lets the machine that's doing that work make decisions, extract information, and particularly when there's a limited bandwidth challenge to shore, it allows that information to be communicated so that the pilot can control it. I think I might
Sorry,
summarize
Adrian, 1 minute finish, please.
Yeah, I think I might have summarized a few slides in that section. So if you go to the next one, we can skip through a couple. Yeah, so keep going. And yeah, I think another aspect of it is measurement, and you can keep going again, Liam. And keep going once more again. And yeah, what we do is we generate this user interface. This what we call CX Observer is essentially a 3D environment where the user onshore, given that all the data was QC'd offshore and collected very quickly, we merge that data into a 3D platform where they can review the data, tag the data, integrate it with their integrity management systems. And then over time, where we're going with this is that we will use that information for the operator or the asset owner to essentially automate that process in the longer term. If you skip on to the next slide, Liam, and we'll go straight on to the second last one, maybe. Yeah, once more. And one more. Oh, there's one missing. Okay. Sorry, there was I thought there was another slide in there. If you, yeah, it must have gone somewhere. So from a automation point of view, I think that maybe the key message for Cathix and from Cathix is our existing and traditional businesses have been evolving rapidly over the last 18 months. We haven't been offshore. We're moving towards uncrewed operations, and we're also seeing that the automation services apply to some of the scale of the new sectors, the new industries. So deep sea mining, wind, we've done quite a bit of work actually with the Marine Institute in terms of their NEFROPS counting, and that's kind of got legs as well, particularly in the sense that it's not just NEFROPS, but it's taught us a little bit about how we collect large volumes of data of specific things on the seabed, and with organizations like the Alfred Wegener Institute and some of the research organizations around the world who have our systems, we're also seeing what they're doing and trying to deploy that for applications in habitat mapping, in mining and wind. So that hopefully gives you a bit of a sense of where Cathix has come from, where we're going, some of the changes in the industry. And if anybody has any questions, if I don't get to answer them today, I'd be very happy to do it anytime after. Thank you, Liam.
That's great. Thank you very much, Adrian. I'm always fascinated by the quality of your images. I think they're just really striking. That's great. Thank you very much. You might come off video, please, Adrian. And I'm going to hand over now to Tig Kenny, who's going to take control, and he's going to present directly himself. Tig, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Liam. Just waiting for control, I think. Thank you. Let me see now. Share. And these. Yeah, that looks good, I think. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Tig from Druid Software. Delighted to be invited by Enterprise Ireland to join you today for this showcase. As an Enterprise Ireland client company, Druid are very grateful for all the fantastic support we get in our key export markets. Today, I'm going to briefly talk to you about the important data communications, the importance it plays in the marine sector, and how 4G and 5G wireless technology is being used. But first, let me give you a little bit of background and context. So from our base in Bray, County Wicklow, Druid have grown into a global leader of specialist core network software, specifically for 4G and 5G private networks. Our cellular technology platform is called RAMIS, a name we derived from the term radio access emissary. We focus on delivering solutions for enterprise, mobile edge computing, public safety, neutral host, and IoT. And we often provide customization and consultancy services with our platform, depending on the customer need. We have thousands of networks deployed globally, developed by our team in Bray and distributed and supported by our global system integrator partners. So Druid have been delivering cellular technology for over 20 years now, coinciding with the availability of cellular spectrum to deploy private networks in several European countries over a decade ago. Our Dutch partners were particularly innovative. They've deployed Ramus in their main hospitals and universities, elderly care facilities, factories, ports, and conference centres. Public mobile operators have also chosen Ramus for their enterprise portfolios to address resilience and low latency needs. As it happens, we just announced our latest 5G trials this morning with Proximus and BICS in the Benelux region. We were one of the first to deliver true 5G standalone capability last summer, and we see how our 5G licensing is growing quite rapidly since, as major testbeds and trials are funded in several countries to help local enterprise engage and discover how they can use 5G to drive efficiencies. Did my slide change there? Yes, great. Our Ramus technology is a mature 3GPP compliant application. 3GPP relates to GSMA global mobile standards. Ramus has unique features specifically designed for enterprise critical communications. Some examples are our ability to prioritize devices and provide them with a guaranteed quality of service. Unlike larger competitors, we can easily scale down as well as up and enable our partners to set up small or very large networks. We can be deployed at the customer site for greater security and lower latency, or in high dependency cloud native environments for central management. Ramus is built on REST API principles, making it easy to integrate with key business critical applications. And we've made cellular networks simple to use and manage with our user-friendly dashboard. So from our many years of experience working with global partners addressing maritime communications, we know some of the key challenges are getting good quality data coverage into remote locations offshore. Satellite backhaul costs can be prohibitively expensive, and connecting these remote solutions to onshore monitoring stations. We also see how climate change is making conditions more hazardous for routine cold chain maintenance checks on deck. The COVID pandemic has highlighted how vulnerable supply chains are and how the knock-on effects for shipping companies can impact all of us. An interesting statistic from our partners delivering Druid in the digital container industry is that 90% of global commerce is transported at sea. 1/3 of food produced is wasted from farm to table, and 15% of that waste happens during transportation. To address these issues, we see how for many years now, IoT technologies and private cellular networks are being deployed to create greater visibility, efficiency, and control at sea. Digital transformation in logistics, shipping, and maritime has been quite rapid from our vantage point. To give you an idea of scale, some of the largest container ships we are deployed on can carry 20,000 containers. Many of these are refrigerated. Container inspection at sea for temperature management is largely still a manual process. Climate change has only made this more difficult and hazardous, with more storms and extreme weather conditions hampering regular inspections. As a result, reaction time to container incidents affecting temperature is critical to avoid cargo loss. Therefore, the visibility and control we enable for these containers across the world helps to manage capacity and supply chain availability. Let's take a look now at some of the real-life use cases in the marine sector that are using Druid's private cellular network platform for business and mission-critical communications. I've highlighted some key examples here of container telemetry and tracking, port automation, offshore wind farms, crew communications on ships and vessels, and maritime IoT. In offshore wind farms, for example, with our partners in Benelux EBO Enterprises, we are connected to Nokia base stations, and the Druid Ramus private network provides data for mission-critical push-to-talk and health and safety applications. In addition, the private network provides critical data for access to the turbines, which is done through smart devices and door access systems. The next one, shipping companies, like those in the Port of Rotterdam, have been quick to embrace new technologies to gain competitive advantage. The real-time positioning applications and control of unmanned vehicles Druid have been supporting for the last 6 or 7 years in Rotterdam Port are a must-have for modern transportation. One of our first US ports is at the Port of Oakland, a major container ship facility located in San Francisco Bay. It was the first major port on the US Pacific coast to build terminals for container ships. Their pioneering continues today as they gain new efficiencies by using Druid's private network technology with wireless IoT devices to enable multiple smart port applications by leveraging our reliable high-speed mobile data communications platform. By partnering with Druid, Oakland Maritime Support Services are able to enhance their existing infrastructure to support the emerging demands through the use of intelligent intermodal applications, such as container yard workflow analytics, environmental monitoring, smart gate management, and drone surveillance. For maritime communications, we provide vital coverage on ships for container tracking and telemetry monitoring of refrigerated containers. Here in this image, you can see the team from our system integrator partner, Wireless Maritime Services. Lee Maybe on the far right stands beside the 4G LTE antenna connected to the Ericsson base station, and Mohan in the white t-shirt on the left is standing next to the waterproof network in a box, or NIB, as we call it in our industry, where the Druid Ramus 4G network is running, providing coverage for this vessel. The real-time remote visibility of these assets at sea is a key use case here. We are supporting 100% cellular IoT wireless coverage, which includes the bridge and the cargo holds above and below deck. Our platform also supports 100% delivery of condition alerts to crew members on smart devices or onboard monitoring systems, or they can be delivered remotely to onshore network operation centers. The Druid 4G network is driving efficiencies and faster response times by allowing crew members to receive test alarm notifications anywhere on board. With faster response times to container alarms, this has greatly reduced cargo spoilage and insurance claims at sea. There has also been a marked reduction and elimination of scheduled manual refrigerated container inspections, allowing for crew hours that were dedicated to cargo monitoring to be better spent elsewhere. So hopefully I've gained some time back for you there, Liam. I hope everyone found those marine use cases really interesting, and please do feel free to reach out to me if you need any further information. Back to you, Liam.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tyke. And you were very good on time. Take my hat off to you there. Yourself and Aidan did brilliantly. Okay, guys, it just kind of leaves it to me to summarize briefly. I don't think we have time for questions. There were a couple of very quick questions, so I just covered those. One was around, will the slides be available? Yes, the event is recorded, so you will actually be able to see those slides. The second piece was around how do you register for the offshore wind event in January 2022. We don't actually have a registration open for that as yet, but we know who the key people are. But do feel free to get involved and you know, let us know that you're interested, and we'll put you on our list. But we you know, you've seen the 60 plus companies there in our Gale offshore network, and we think we probably captured almost everybody. If you're in that business and you're not on that list, or you feel that you haven't heard from us, please get in contact, because obviously we want to bring that capability together for the greater benefit of Ireland Inc. and indeed for the marine industry in Ireland. Look, thank you so much to the presenters, Katrina, Carl, Danny, Aidan, Adrian, and Tyke. I think what you've shown is the level of innovation in Ireland around the marine sector. When I joined Mainstream EI, my history is that I worked in a lab and in a survey capability within EI up to about 10 years ago. And when I joined Mainstream EI, one of my key questions was, guys, what's happening in the marine sector? And the response was, well, there's not a huge amount happening in that sector at the moment. Nobody says that anymore. Because we have some really innovative, cracking companies in this space, and it's brilliant to be able to showcase them. Final point, do please come back to us on the events for next year. You're going to see that poll on the social media, on the MIN social media site. We do need to know what you want in terms of events. Personally, I'd love to do a face-to-face event on site, and you know, maybe around some new vessels that have arrived into the industry. You know, I do love a good ship tour. So look, thank you so much for everybody for attending. We actually had in the region of about 80 to 90 people there who stayed for the entire event, so people were really interested. Thank you as well to the presenters, obviously, and thank you to Giuseppe and Tommy, who are there in the background, making it all flow seamlessly. Thank you very much, guys. And look, we look forward to face-to-face events in 2022 with everybody. And thank you so much. And we look forward to meeting everybody in 2022. Stay safe, and thank you all for attending. Take care.